night beckons. What, mortal? You thought of that? What is it now? What, mortal? Very well. You thought of that? I must hunt soon. Agreed. Very well. That was my plan. Very well. Agreed. That was my plan. What, mortal? Very well. You thought of that. Very well. That was my plan. Agreed. That was my plan. Very well. That was my plan. Very well. You thought of that? Must be.
哇，还有这种事哦，这么厉害！
Greetings. Agreed. That was my plan. Agreed. That was my plan. Agreed. Very well. What is it now? You thought of that? That was my plan.
这么凶哦！
What, mortal? You thought of that? Greeting. What is it now? Agreed. You thought of that? Agreed. Very well. You thought of that? That was my plan. Very well. Greetings. I must hunt soon. You thought of that? Agreed. You thought of that? Agreed. That was my plan. Agreed. That was my plan. What is it now? Greetings.
Welcome to our village.
What is it now? What, mortal? Very well. You thought of that. Agreed. You thought of that. Very well. You thought of that. Very well. Agreed. Very well. That was my plan. Very well. Agreed. Greetings. Very well. You thought of that? Agreed. I must act soon.
Point away.
What is it now? What, mortal? Very well. Agreed. That was my plan. You thought of that? What is it now? Agreed. That was my plan. You thought of that? Very well. Greetings. That was my plan. You thought of that? Very well. You thought of that? Agreed. Not enough.
哎，你等级还比我低哦。
Attack! That was my plan. You thought of that?
飞过来啊！
Agreed.
啊！
Our allied hero has been slain. Very well. That was my
就
plan.
过来啊！应该是丢爆你！
That was my plan. Very well. Thought of that? Hunt soon. That was my plan. I hunger. What? Very well. That was my plan. Very well. That was my plan. Very well. Agreed. Very well. You thought of that? Very well. That was my plan. What, mortal? What, mortal? You thought of that? That was my plan. You thought of that? That was my plan. Our allied hero has been slain. Our allied hero has been slain. You thought of that? That was my plan. You thought of that? Agreed. Very well. Agreed. What is it now? That was my
哎，刚好
plan.
在买装嘛，不要这样子啊！
Under attack! You thought of that? That was my plan. I must hunt soon. Death rages. Very well. You thought of that? Very well. What is it now? That was my plan. I hunger. Very well.
Greetings, friend.
Must hunt soon. That was my plan. What? We're under attack! Agreed. Death rages. That was my plan. So is mine. Our allied hero has been slain. We need more gold. What is it now? I hunger. Our allied hero has been slain. What? Mortal. Very well. Agreed. You thought of that? Agreed. That was my plan. Very well. Death rages. That was my plan. You thought of that? Very well. I hunger. That was my plan. Greetings. Very well. You thought of that? That was my plan. Agreed. Very well. I must hunt soon. Agreed. That was my plan. What is it now? Greetings. Very well. I must hunt soon. That was my plan. Very well. You thought of that? That was my plan. Very well. Agreed. That was my plan. Very well. Agreed.
Welcome to our village.
Our allied town is being attacked. What mortal? Agreed.
哎，你妹！
Very well. Greetings. That's not in our plan. Plan. I must come soon. Greetings. You thought of that? I must come soon. Agreed. Very well. Agreed. What mortal? You thought of that? That was my plan. I hunger. Agreed. Greetings. You thought of that? What is it now? Very well. What?
哦，还有
Our allied hero has been slain. That was my plan. Very well. Agreed. Very well. Agreed. Agreed. What mortal? That was my plan. That was my plan. I must hunt soon. Greetings. I must hunt soon. Very well. What is it now?
哎，
你妹干什么啦？
那哥哥头了，
给我出去啦！
没关系。
I must hunt soon.
不然就去罚站6站好，6罚站站好。
Agreed. Bridges. That was my plan. Very well. Thought of that. Very well. That was my plan. Agreed. Die. Very well. Agreed. We're under attack! Allied hero has been slain. I must hunt soon. Very well. We're under attack! What? Greetings. That was my plan. Agreed. I must hunt soon. What is it now? I must hunt soon. That was my plan. Agreed. What is it now? Very well. That was my plan. Agreed. You thought of
Our
that.
allied town is being attacked!
Greetings. What, mortal? That was my plan.
We're under
Very
attack!
well. You thought of that? That was my plan. Agreed. You thought of that? Very well. Agreed. I hunger. My plan. Agreed. That was my plan. Greetings. You thought of that? Agreed. Very well. That was my plan. Agreed. What is it now? That was my plan. Very well. That was my plan. Agreed. Very well. That was my plan. Very well. That was my plan. Very well. Agreed. You thought of that? Agreed. Very well. Die. I hunger.
Our allied town is being attacked!
What, mortal? I must hunt soon. What is it now? Greetings. What, mortal? Agreed. Very well. What is it now? That was my plan. You thought of that? That was my plan. You thought of that? What, mortal? That was my plan. Agreed. I hunger. Very well. Agreed. That was my plan. Death rages. You thought of that? That was my plan. Agreed.
哦，
We're under attack!
Your soul is mine. That was my plan.
Our allied town is being attacked! I hunger.
You thought of that? Agreed. Greetings. Very well. Agreed. Very well. That was my plan. Agreed. Very well. That was my plan. That was my plan. You thought of that. That was my plan.
嗯，
Agreed. What mortal? That was my plan. You thought of that? That was my plan. I must hunt soon. What mortal? Death rages. You thought of that? Agreed. Very well. Agreed. What is it now? That was my plan. Die. Very well.
Our allied
That
hero
was
has
my
been
plan.
slain.
Death rages. Agreed. That was my plan. You thought of that? Very well. That was my plan. You thought of that? I must hunt soon. Very well. Agreed. Very well. Greetings. Agreed. That was my plan.
嗯，
I must hunt soon.
哇，
You thought of
谁 CP 这么快？
what mortal? That was my plan. Greeting. Very well. What is it now? Agreed. What? That was my plan.
哦，猛哎，护这么紧，没印度。
Must hunt soon.
哎，没了。
That was my plan. Very well.
Our allied town is being attacked.
That was my plan.
哦，你不要过来，你会死哦。我妈呀，杀成这样还要玩吗？
What is it now? Agreed. You thought of that? Very well. That was my plan. I must hunt soon. Greetings. Very well. Must hunt soon. Death rages. That was my plan.
龙川呢？爱放弃了吧？
Very well. What, mortal? You thought of that? That was my plan. Must hunt soon. Agreed. That was my plan. You thought
Research
of
complete.
that? That was my plan. You thought of that? Agreed. That was my plan. Greetings. Must hunt soon. What, mortal? Agreed. That was my plan. Die.
大概要早早放弃了吧？
Death rages. Die. You thought of that? Very well. That was my plan. I hunger. That was my plan. That was my plan. Must hunt soon. Very well. Greetings.
反应也真快哎，都即将。
What, mortal? Agreed.
We're under attack!
Must hunt soon. You thought of that? Agreed. That was my plan. Very well. That was my plan. Very well.
Our allied town is being attacked!
That was my plan. Very well. That was my plan. What is it now? Very well. Please. You thought of that? Must hunt soon. That was my plan. I hunger. You thought of that? That was my plan. Die. You thought of that? Very well. You thought of that? Agreed. Very well. You thought of that? Agreed.